goodness, now you're asking me 16 questions. Okay, so hello. We're gonna be starting a chat kind of about how research is conducted and kind of the process that people go through in order to do this research. And I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard our spiel about research, whether it was at open houses or at various high school events and stuff like that, orientation. But I'm going to kind of go through it on like the practical level, that as someone who's conducted research myself, kind of how this goes, and then how it's different than what you guys see typically out in the world. So first of all, I want to ask you guys a question. You guys can either jump on with the chat, or you can just, verbally respond on your microphone. Where, if you wanted to find out some information about a scientific topic, where would you find that information? So let's say you wanted to find out about, the latest treatment in COVID, or, as teenagers, are you guys at risk of spreading COVID? Like, if you wanted to find some information about this topic, where would you go to find that information?
Google Scholar.
Google Scholar, excellent. Where else? Come on, you guys know how to find information. Google it to find articles. Google News, google.com, excellent. What are some other sources besides Google? And you don't have to give me Bing or any other web browsers. Okay, look it up. Okay, where would you look it up besides, the Googles?
I would say the CDC for that specific topic.
Okay, yeah, so for a topic about medicine or health, the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control, great. FAU.edu, the FAU library. Oh my goodness, you guys are so smart. Okay, what about people like your parents or grandparents? Like your grandparents, especially if they're not very techie, where do people like your grandparents get news about science? The library, good. Newspapers, yes, they do still print them. Books, TV on the news, yes. TLC, yes. Watching the news, television, books. Are your grandparents on Facebook? Probably get a lot of like news, quote unquote, on Facebook, and maybe even some science news on there once in a while. Yeah, TV news. If you watch any nightly news, like usually about halfway through like their program, so say it's an hour-long program, but halfway through towards the end, they start talking about, oh, in recent research, scientists have discovered that blah, 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 and they give you like some like quick 2 sentences about some research study. So that's where most people find science. Where do people who are actual scientists find science? I know that's a really weird question, but where do actual scientists go to find information? Scientific journals, journal articles. Okay, you guys have heard of some of these things before. Where else do we go to get the latest cutting edge research information? Other scientists, colleagues, good. Ask their coworkers, science research articles, experts. Beautiful. All right, I love it. You guys are right on the right track. And Natasha, you had mentioned before going on Google Scholar, and that's a way to search for journal articles. And we're going to talk about that quite a bit. And CBI, professors, yeah. So they can go to other experts in their field, whether they know them from where they work, or they go to conferences, which we're going to talk about. Like we go to conferences, essentially it's a big nerd fest where we all get together and then we just nerd out over each other's research. We do that quite a bit. So that's where other scientists find science. Now, the disconnect between where the general population finds science and where actual scientists find science, there's kind of a gulf in between, and that's typically mediated by science journalists. So imagine you find some really interesting piece of scientific news. You're like, man, I found this drug. It cures COVID 100% of the time, and like we can save all these lives. Like that's really important stuff. And now you have to tell that out into the world. There's a process that you go through to get that piece of information published in a journal article. But then from there, someone has to take that and then translate that into like common language for people in the media to be able to actually read and understand. And in that process, we have these journalists who focus generally on, usually you have like one or two people who kind of focus on science. But the problem is that a lot of those people aren't actually scientists themselves. Or if they are, maybe they were in chemistry, but medicine's not really their area of expertise. So when they're reporting on scientific news in medicine, it's not their wheelhouse. So they kind of know how these things go, but the real nitty gritty details are kind of lost. Another thing is that they're trying to get you to listen to the story. So they're going to push maybe kind of one aspect of it, or maybe kind of, a finding that's a little beyond what they actually studied. They do that all the time. Or if it's online, they want you to click on that headline, right? You've heard of clickbait, I'm sure, a million times. So clickbait, what they do is they write a strong headline that makes you want to click on it and find out more. So the way that science comes from actual scientists in their little lab world bubbles into the general media, there's a huge kind of gap in between that. And there can be a lot lost in translation. So I'm sure you guys have seen headlines like coffee cures cancer, or coffee staves off Alzheimer's, or whatever else it might be. Like there's a million different ways that coffee can save your life. But on the other side, like too much coffee causes memory loss, or too much coffee gives you a heart attack, or coffee gives you cancer. And you'll have two completely different findings about coffee coming out in the same week. And you're like, what is going on? And what happens is that the scientific journalists, because they're just getting these really technical articles, and they're trying to essentially write them in a dumbed down form for the general population, a lot gets lost in those details. There's a really excellent clip from Last Week Tonight. If you've ever seen that show, it's on HBO with John Oliver, where he talks about science. If you look up John Oliver, Last Week Tonight, science, it comes up. I would show you, but it's got a lot of bad words. And I'm not saying you should watch it, but I'm just saying it's really good. Where he talks about this problem that we see in the media when it comes to trying to get a hold of like good scientific journalists. Hang on, I think Rachel's trying to, okay. Okay, I'm trying to make sure she has a way to get in. So yeah, so there's this huge gulf between those two worlds. Okay, she's trying to, oops. Okay, we're still trying to get Rachel in. We're gonna get her. So yeah, so like I said, there's a gulf between those two worlds. One of the studies that John Oliver profiles is that there was a study that came out, and according to the news media, it said that women who eat dark chocolate, and it was like a certain amount, have lower levels of preterm birth when they're eating this chocolate while they're pregnant. They're less likely to have a premature birth. And so all the news was like, oh, everyone should be eating their dark chocolate. And it's like, only 2/3 of a candy bar, not the full thing. Like, this is the whole thing. It turns out the actual study was on some compound that is found in dark chocolate. And when given at like this moderate dose to rats, not humans, while they were pregnant, they had lower chances of preterm birth. So it wasn't in humans. It wasn't with actual chocolate. It was a compound that's found in dark chocolate, and it's this very specific amount. And they saw a very minor effect in rats. So can we translate that to humans? Probably not. So we have to be really careful in how we read these news sources. Now, the great thing is that you're going to learn the skills in this class and kind of throughout FAU in general of how to find the real information about these news sources. So I'm going to bring up, I'm kind of walk us through this just really quickly, a quick process. And we're going to go through this more in the next couple of weeks, but let me bring up Chrome and a new Google page. Okay, Rachel's still struggling. Oops. Okay. Ah, looks like we have success. Okay, we got everyone in now. I'm so happy. Hi, Rachel. We got you. Okay, you only missed a few minutes. We had to do a lot of introduction stuff anyway, so you're all set. Okay, so we're talking about how science goes from journals, which is what scientists use, into the media, and how it's a big jump. So I'm bringing up Google. I want to do a quick screen share, hopefully. Wait, there we go. Okay, so Google, let's see what they're saying about health benefits of dark chocolate, because dark chocolate's delicious. Okay, let's go to news. Okay, so scientists found a way to make milk chocolate healthier. That's good. Health benefits of dark chocolate can be recreated in milk. Okay, we've getting all this milk chocolate stuff. I want to, oh, a heart healthy option in moderation. Eating chocolate once a week can lower your risk of heart disease. That sounds like a really good topic. So let's go into this one. From Market Watch, never even heard of this company before. So we go through here. Okay, so when we look at these articles that we see online, it's important to kind of look for some certain details. So right here it says, a new study published in the European Journal of Preventive Cardiology. So that's the name of the actual journal. And they even give you a hyperlink. You can actually go to it. So let's see if we can open that up. And then they talk about all this stuff. They saw an 8% lower risk of blocked arteries in 336,000 participants. That's pretty good. They reported their chocolate consumption. Now we also have the name of the author and what university. So it's Dr. something very long name of Baylor College of Medicine in Houston. So let me see if we go to this link here that we opened. Oh, look at that. They even give us the article right here. So this is one of the nice things. If you kind of know what you're doing and you know where to look, you can actually find these articles right here. So this is the full article that the scientists actually wrote for other scientists. And this will allow you to kind of find out more information. Now this looks like they don't give us the whole article because usually they're not this short. So sometimes you can go to the PDF. Sometimes you have to search these things through a university library, which you guys have access to, but I'm going to show you how to do that at a later point. So if you ever read a headline in one of these news science stories, and you're like, I don't know about that, you can always open up the article, find out a little bit more information, and then they have, you can see the author information here, you can see where they work, and you can just make sure it is the right author, and that also that they're a legit source. Sometimes people will publish in journal articles, or the journals themselves may not be super trustworthy. I'm going to kind of explain how to find that kind of stuff out. But they're working for universities, they're probably going to be pretty legitimate. So you can always kind of take a look at where this person works. So they have an affiliation with Mount Sinai. That's very good. Co-author, Mount Sinai as well. Where's this guy? Mayo Clinic. So yeah, so these guys all have really good credentials. So these are people that we can probably trust, but we still have to go in and actually look to see really was the effect as strong as they said it was. So I hope that kind of helps you learn how to pinpoint these things a little bit better. Now let me get my stuff up here. Okay, so when we talk about journals, journals you may or may not have seen. I just showed you an article from a journal, but you've probably never seen one in person. In today's environment where everything is digital, it's kind of rare to see physical journals out in the world, but I have a couple to show you. All right, so I brought some journals from work. Last time I was at school, I grabbed these off my shelf so I could show you guys. There are two top journals in the entire world, and they're very cleverly named Science and Nature. You know, these people, they're very creative. So this is Science. People jokingly call it the glossy magazine, just like, oh, it's too good. We also have Nature. This is the other big one. So all journals are ranked. They're ranked by what they call their impact factor. And what that means is that the articles within so the journal articles in here get cited very often. And every journal has a ranking. I don't know the number of the impact factor for Science and Nature right now, but anything above a 2 is considered decent. Anything above a 10 is like top notch. So Science and Nature, these are the 2 best journals in the entire world. So if you find something amazing, you find life on Mars, or you find a cure for cancer, or I don't know, you figure out how to cure COVID, whatever it might be, you can probably get it into Science and Nature, which is amazing. People work their entire careers to get like 1 article in these journals, and it's a huge deal for their careers. Like universities throw them parties. It's a big deal, like practically parades. Like it's really that big of a deal, especially for universities, kind of like FAU. They're kind of like building their research. You know, Harvard, Yale, like they get Science Nature articles all the time. But for like mid-tier universities, like they're like, woo, we got an article. So just to kind of show you, you can see it's got this nice cover, good image. Normally this in class is a little bit easier, but it's got some information here. Talk about, you know, some career expos. Usually there's a lot of like advertisements in the front, just like any other magazine. They also have just like some more general interest articles, letters to the editor, that kind of stuff. They will also usually give their editorial board right at the beginning. So like right here, you have like all the people who work in the different positions at the journal. More advertisements, and this is just kind of like general articles, a little bit more broad topic stuff. But we go a few more pages in, kind of like National Geographic at the beginning. But then we go into actual articles. Okay. So here's a perspective article called Defining the Anthropocene. So about like humans like affecting the earth. We got some fun graphs and charts, but I will say, once we get into it, it's dense. It is all just very small writing. Oh, look at that. We have some graphs, but they're in color. It costs a lot to print in color. So when they start putting color stuff in here, you know it's a top tier journal. Again, lots of words. And then you have always at the end of every journal what's called the references section. So it's like your works cited page. And you know, this article alone has, let's see, 127 citations in this one like 6-page article in Nature. So that's kind of how it looks. The next article is Quantitative Evolutionary Dynamics Using High Resolution Lineage Tracking. What, I don't know what that's about, but that's what it is. Oh, look at that. They also have some color graphs. Very fancy. Very, very fancy. All right. So Nature is kind of like this. So is Science. Science kind of has like the same basic layout. Some pictures. Mostly it's, you know, very technical graphics. Again, to get in here, you don't have a lot of space. They usually keep their articles very, very short. But this is like the creme de la creme of anything out in the world. Someone asked, is it better than National Geographic? Yes. If you get an article in Science or Nature, like this is for scientists. Like this is the top you can possibly get. National Geographic, while it is a very good magazine, it's meant for the general public. It's not meant for scientists. You're not going to see works cited pages at the end. It's not the cutting edge science that's actually coming out. So this, so Science is, I think it's a monthly, maybe it's every other week. They publish this, and this comes out every couple weeks. You know, National Geographic, it's a couple scientists and interviewers and scientific journalists. They come and they talk to these scientists, and then they write like a piece for National Geographic, but it's not the actual science. It's a piece about the science for general readers. So while I have a huge place in my heart for National Geographic, I grew up reading it. It's not a scientific journal. It's a science magazine for the public. But Science and Nature, these are journals. But these, again, these are the flashy, glossy cover journals. Most of them don't look like that. So the thing with Science and Nature is that they are broad journals. So anyone in any field of science and research can publish in it. If you're medicine, if you're astronomy, engineering, you can try to publish in Science and Nature. But I will say the rejection rate for these journals is very high. It's about 90%. So if you want to get published in Science and Nature, you write up your paper, you send it in to them, and 90% of the time, they're going to say, thanks, but no thanks. Literally, I've done this. We wrote up an article for Nature, not even actual Nature, like Nature Neuroscience, like a subversion of Nature. And within 24 hours, we got a thanks, but no thanks. You're not right for us at this time. So, you know, it is what it is. But that's the most common outcome of sending your article to them. Now, there are other journal articles or journals. I have one here from American Psychologist. It's got a nice cover, but every single thing on the inside is black and white. Kind of has the same stuff. It's got some advertisements, but it's got their editor board kind of right when you first get in. Let's see. Let's find some graphs here. I don't want your stupid face, lady. I know you're a fancy researcher, but I don't care. I don't know who you are. Obituaries. Yes, they put obituaries for the scientists. I know. That's a whole thing. Okay. So like here's the start of an article here. It's hard to see, but it's very small. And then like their graphs and tables and these are not in color. They don't have that kind of money. I'm trying to even like find a graph. Geez, this one's really boring. All right, this one's not very good. Here you go. Integrative and comparative biology. Doesn't that sound like a really good bedtime story? Okay, so this one's got a nice fancy cover. But once again, you go on the inside and it's all gonna be black and white. And it's all just gonna be big old blocks of text and a whole bunch of references, of course. Oh, here's some more graphs. Yep, we're not in science anymore, you guys. It's black and white. So these journals, they are going to be more bland, but the thing is that Science and Nature, they're general science journals. These are for people who are only in the field of integrative and comparative biology. So it's only for the people who are interested in this field and who work in this field who are going to want to read it and people who are going to want to submit to it. So it's a lot smaller of a group. What's the criteria to get published? I'm going to explain that in a little bit because it's a whole process. And yes, the majority of magazines like you would find on the shelf are in color, but they have a lot of ads. If you ever pick up a magazine, especially like a women's fashion magazine or like a car magazine, it's 90% ads. Like count the number of actual pages of article versus ads, and it's going to be more ads than anything. Who's going to put an ad in this? Like Revlon is not putting an ad in integrative and comparative biology. The ads that they do have, is specimen cabinets, you guys. Or it's going to be Oxford Press. You want a new journal? Make it with Oxford Press. So it's very specialized, you guys. This is like not journal advertising here. Here's how you get your ad in this journal. How to get a reprint. Like this is what, Revlon's not in here, you guys. BMW is not putting ads in comparative biology journals. So the money's not here. And I'm going to explain where they even get the money just to do this bare bones stuff, because it does cost money to print this and ship this and do all that, because we'll talk about it. I have another one here. This is Developmental Psychobiology. This is a conference and a society that I actually belonged to when I was a graduate student. This one only comes out every 6 months. This one I think is a monthly journal. So yeah, so some of them come out really frequent and some of them come out very infrequent, but this is a very small group of people who work in this field, myself being one of them, and so it doesn't come out very often. Doesn't mean it's a bad journal. It just means that they just don't have that big of a pull because it's a smaller field. So I'm trying to find a front page for you. So effects of rearing conditions on early visual development in common marmosets. So here's your title. And this is like if you download this article, this is what it's going to look like online. This is what you're going to see come up on your computer screen. But here it is on paper. And here's even pictures of the marmosets. Aw, they're little primates. See, they're so cute. All right. I can hardly see them because the black and white is so bad. But yes, more graphs that are in black and white. That's the way it works at this point. So these journals, again, these are a smaller audience. They're usually a lot smaller. They're less fancy. Again, you're not going to get the crazy advertisements. So, you know, it's expensive to put these things out. And even like you have to pay editors and things like that to work on these. So it's costs a bit of money. Now, if, like I said, I've been to the conference for this journal. Now, what I mean by that is each of these journals is typically supported by a society, not like a secret society, skull and crossbones or whatever other crazy Yale nonsense. A society is just a group of scientists who kind of band together on a specific topic, and usually once a year or every other year they get together for a conference, again, where they get together, they go to another city, they stay at a fancy hotel, and they nerd out and they listen to each other talk for hours and hours and hours, and that's pretty much what you do. And then after, in between, you shake hands and you network, and then you talk science. But to be a part of the society, you have to pay a membership fee. So for this one, I believe the membership fee was like, for graduate students, I want to say it was like 100 or 150 a year. For faculty members, like full professors, they're usually paying like 350 to 500 a year. They understand that grad students make no money. I think it actually should be lower for graduate students because they make very little money versus professors who are doing okay. So that's one of the things that they do. Once you become a member of the society, you get on their mailing list, so you get to hear job opportunities. They'll, you know, if someone's looking for a graduate student for their lab or someone to work as a lab manager, they'll put out an email to the whole listserv and be like, hey, I'm looking for a lab manager. Do you have anyone who you think would fit? And that's a good way to find jobs. So that's one of the good things about being a society member. You also get free access to these beautiful journals. They'll send them to you. You also can go online and find them. And you get them for free, but you already paid your dues. So free is a relative term. And so you also can go to their conference. So let's say the conference registration fee is normally $250. If you're a member, it'll be like $150. So you get $100 off because you already paid your $100 dues. So, I mean, usually you don't save anything, but they want you to be a part of the society. You go to the conference. Sometimes there's food for free, usually like breakfast and coffee and stuff like that. So depending on the size of the conference, they may not offer anything like that. This conference was great because they did give us breakfast and they did give us like a little like snack and coffee hour, which was great. I got to go to the conference for this one in New Orleans, and we stayed in the French Quarter, and they had beignets for breakfast every morning, and I ate like my body weight in beignets that week. It was great. But free samples, not so much. So some of the bigger conferences, they'll have space where they have like their vendors, and you can get swag like pens and little like reusable tote bags, stuffed animals, stuff like that. But again, it's like conferences, like you're not going to some trade show where they're giving you everything for free. I don't know if I mentioned this. My husband works for Best Buy. Best Buy has conferences too, and they send like their top stores. We got to go one year in San Diego. Everyone gets sent free, plus their spouse. They feed you like open bar. It was fantastic, and you get like $1,000 of free technology. That ain't these conferences. This isn't how this works. My husband's like, oh, I have to go sit through a session. I'm like, you got $100 like Fitbit today because you went to this conference. Like, I don't know. Like, I got breakfast. So let's talk about this. So yeah, free samples are a little bit less important, but you're networking, and that's the really big deal. You get to meet other professors, other graduate students when you go to these conferences, and that's the real bonus of going to these things. I have met some of my best friends in academia by going to conferences. Now, for graduate students, especially if you're going to stay in the conference hotel, it's very expensive. It's about $200 to $250 a night for these conference hotels. And that's the conference discount. Like, these hotels are expensive. They're like always like Marriott's and Hilton's. They don't include breakfast. They don't include Wi-Fi. Like, can I say La Quinta? Like, they got it all for free, please. And it's like $60 a night. I don't know, drives me crazy. And you're always in some like downtown, very expensive area. But what you do as a graduate student, because you're poor, is you go on there, you ask, you know, the conference registration people, you're like, hey, is there a list of graduate students looking for roommates? And you sign up to room with other graduate students, typically, you know, girls and boys separate. But I always joke that one of my best friends, Christina, who's now a professor at the University of Indiana, Purdue, her and I, we met because we slept together in New Orleans, meaning that we shared a bed in New Orleans because there's 4 of you to a room and you can't go anywhere else. It's a teeny tiny room and that's what you do. We've become really good friends. We've done like 4 conferences together. Her family lives in Lake Worth, so I've hung out with her. We went to a conference in North Carolina like 2 summers ago. We talk all the time. She now teaches like a similar class to my intro psych class. So we share war stories and ideas and stuff all the time. So you meet some of your best friends at conferences because you just, you know, you share a small space with them, even if just for 4 days. And you get to talk about your research and your experience, and it's a lot of fun. So going to these conferences, while it can be very mentally draining and very expensive, you get to meet some really cool people. So that's one of the things you go when you do this. Yeah, nothing is free is for real. So now imagine you're a normal lay person and you want to get access to one of the articles in here. You can go to Google Scholar, or you can just like literally search up the title of the article in normal Google and it will come up. But oftentimes what you'll get is the abstract, which is like the summary. You get some information, maybe you see some graphs and tables, but then it'll be like, oh, pay $29.95 for access to this article. One of the nice things is that if you're a member of the society, you don't have to pay, you've already paid your dues. But here's the thing, you guys are now college students and universities subscribe to these journals and they're available for you for free through the university library system. So if you were to go on to FAU's library and you looked up one of the article titles from this journal, it will come up and you can access it for free. Even if FAU does not subscribe to this journal, there are other ways to get it free, which I will explain later, at least the legal ways. And then, yeah, so there's ways you can get these articles without paying. And you should never have to pay for an article, especially for my class. Never, ever, 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 ever pay for an article.
Call
What was that?
919-451-9718.
Alex?
Alexander.
Oop. I think that was a mistake. That's fine. So yeah, so never pay for a journal article. It's a racket. But the reason they're charging is because it costs a lot of money to run these things. So they have to have editors, which is the person who says whether this journal or this article can come into the journal or not. They also, there's people who actually like have to format and do all this kind of stuff for this, and it has to be printed and shipped, and it costs money. Even though some of these are completely online these days, you still have to do web hosting and it's very expensive. But the nice thing is, again, because you are part of a university, you have an FAU ID, you can get access to these things now for free. Now, I will say the universities, it kind of depends on which university you're at, is how much access you get. So you guys are at FAU. It's a state of Florida university. You guys know that, right? Florida, FAU is a Florida State University. It's like UF and UCF and all the other whatever Fs out there. It's part of the system. The nice thing is that FAU is, you do not need your OWL card. Eventually to get into the library, yes, but for right now you don't. To get into it now, you just sign in through your single sign-in, fau.edu email address and password. I'll show you how to do that in a couple days. Don't worry about it. The nice thing though is, so FAU, okay, so to get access to these journals can be very expensive. Some of these journals can cost $100,000 a year for the university to have access to. While it may cost you $200 to get a membership to the society, it will cost the university $100,000. So imagine you're a small independent liberal arts university where it's just you. You guys know like the tuition rates are insane, right? It can be like $30,000 to $50,000 a year to go to these small private, like UM. Like UM is extremely expensive if you want to go there. Part of that money is going to pay for access to these journals. But FAU, we are a state school. We get funding from the state. Also, you pay tuition. Some of that money is going into the pool for all the library services for the state of Florida, and all the universities are pooling their money to buy access to these journals. It's also nice for books too. If you want a book and FAU doesn't have it, if UF has it or wherever else, you want that book, they will bring that book to you at FAU and get, like, put it at the front desk for you to pick up. It's kind of cool. The librarian will talk more about those services next week, but it's really nice. So FAU is not the only one buying into these journal subscriptions. It's the whole University of Florida system. So that's one of the benefits of being at a state university. You get more broad access. When I worked at Kaiser University for a couple of years, while they have a lot of campuses, they don't have a huge research push. So they didn't have access to very many journals. It was very restricted. And so for me with my research, I wasn't able to get to some of the things I needed to get. I actually had to go through friends who still had their FAU stuff enabled. So like while you're at school, you are an FAU student, you get it. I think you get it for like a year or so after, and then they cut your access, which is a bummer. But you don't get it forever, unfortunately. But there's other ways. There are other ways to get them, and I'll teach you. Yeah, so the universities have to pay for access to these journals, and that can be very expensive. It's a huge budget item for the university. And of course, we want access to all these because all these different departments are doing this research. They all need access to the journals that are important in their field. Now, some very tiny journals are hard to get access to just because like they're so exclusive to very small communities that not everyone has them. But that usually is the very low tier journals, not the higher tier journals. Anything decent, a big school is going to have access to. So yeah. Now, I will say there are some journals that are called open access journals. This is an important thing for you guys to understand. Some journals are open access. I'm trying to remember the name of the big one. Crap, I forget what it is. I applied to put an article in there once and it was a whole fiasco. But open access journals are journals that they don't have a society that supports them. So, and also when you go online to pull one of their journal articles, it's free. You'll never have to pay for an article on their website. Open access means everyone has access to it. But the downside to that is that the person who's trying to publish their article, the researcher themselves, they have to pay to have their article published. And that can be anywhere from a couple $100 to a couple $1,000, depending on how big it is and how many graphics and stuff that they have. And they're only online. You cannot get a paper copy sent to you. So it's a little weird. And a lot of academics kind of have over the years been like it's a pay to play journal. They're probably not very good, but they've gained a lot of good reputation in the past 5 years. There's been a big push to have more open access journals. One of the things that people in science and outside of science have pushed for when it comes to having open access journals is that a lot of the research that's being conducted is being funded by taxpayers. I don't know if you guys know this. So have you ever heard of National Science Foundation or National Institute of Health or National Institute of Mental Health? Have you guys heard of any of these organizations before? Maybe, I'm seeing a couple nods. So like the National Science Foundation, if you watch anything on PBS, it's like, oh, funded by the National Science Foundation, or anything like on NPR, they'll talk about the National Science Foundation. That is the National Foundation for Science, and it's funded by taxpayer money. And of the entire United States budget, 1% of it goes towards scientific research. And that research gets dispersed among a number of agencies. And scientists like myself can apply to get money from these agencies. And we do our research, we buy our equipment, we hire our staff, we do all of our stuff. And then we write up our journal articles, and then we publish them in places that normal people can't get to because it's behind a $30 paywall. That doesn't seem very fair, right? If you as citizens of the United States are paying your taxes, why can't you get access to the product of your taxpayer money, right? Your parents pay income tax, you pay sales tax, things like that. You're putting money into that budget every year, but you're not then able to look at the research that's coming out of that. And so a lot of people have said we should make science more accessible to the general population. It would allow more people to get interested and involved. it would just make it more equitable across the world, because not everyone can have access to universities and things like that. And not every university can get access to these journals. So these open access journals do provide a valuable service. And there has been a big like society push to go more open access, to allow more people to have access to these articles. So that's kind of a thing. So just kind of important to understand. Laura, yes, we are going to talk about, or no, Madeline, or no, yeah. Did I ever get published? Yes, I have been published 5 times, and I'll explain that process, and I'm going to explain how, you know, that whole thing works. It's a very long process. Okay, looking at my outline just to make sure I don't forget anything. So universities, yes, they pay for access to journals. And even like, so some of the scientific journalists, they're not even getting access to the full article because their news organization doesn't have access to it. So they're like looking at like the abstract and like, that's it. And sometimes a university will put out a press release about the journal article where it sums it up. And then it's like a game of telephone. So you have the journal article, you have the university press release, and then like the journalist who's like, I don't know, working for Newsweek or Time Magazine or New York Times, or they're reading that and then writing an article. So it's like a game of telephone. It's very bad. It is very weird. Even one of my articles got a lot of media coverage, and everyone's like, oh, researchers at FAU discovered a cure for autism. And we're like, what? We didn't even test autism. Like, what are you talking about? But they're like, oh, you know, Dr. Lefkowitz and his graduate student, Amy Hansen-Tift. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's what I did. Good to know. No, they're very wrong. And it's actually kind of funny how wrong they are. But it's only funny until you realize that people actually believe what they hear on the news, and you're like, oh crap, this is bad. I have like some really weird emails coming into my inbox. So yeah, you gotta be careful. Okay. Trying to think what I cover. Okay, I still have half an hour. Perfect. Okay. So how to get something into a journal that I keep talking about, these crazy journal articles. So let's say you conducted some research. It depends on the field, how long that takes you to do. My dissertation took 3 years to do. My master's thesis took 2.5 years to do. Most research projects take several years. Angelina, if you're still available, how long do you think one of your projects was going to take from start to finish, just as data collection and analysis goes?
Oh my God. Including training for the instruments, that's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
And I had to get certifications to even use the equipment, and that was it wasn't too bad, but it's additional time. Not even including like publishing or getting stuff written out. I'd say at least a year. Yeah.
How long? How many years?
I probably 1.5 years.
Okay. So yeah. So research takes a long time. So that's one of the things I think a lot of people think is like, oh, we just run a study in like 2 months and we write it up and then like, boom, it's ready to go. Some fields can do that depending on what they're doing. If they're doing like survey research, it can be pretty quick. They can, write their survey, get it verified, and then send it out into the world, collect responses over the course of like 2 or 3 weeks, and they get 1,000 people to take their survey, and then boom, they're ready to publish. My research with babies, I actually had to convince parents in the greater Boca Raton area to bring their babies to my university for me to test them on all these experiments. Hopefully the baby then cooperated and actually sat through 3 different videos. And then afterwards, I'd have to organize my data, make sense of it, and get, 20 babies per age group, 4 to 5 age groups. That's over 100 babies. You know how long it takes to get 100 babies to come into your lab and then also cooperate? It takes months, if not years, to do that. And at the same time, we're running a bunch of different studies. So like you're kind of in competition for baby eye time to actually get them to do that. Oh, what did I test them on? I tested them on a whole variety of different things. And I will explain that probably beginning on Monday or Tuesday. I'm going to do my research talk where I actually explain that kind of thing. And no, I don't pay the parents. It's all voluntary. Because if you give $5 to each parent and $5, like, is that even worth it for them to drive up to Boca and park at FAU and do all that nonsense? Probably not. And so, yeah, it was 100% voluntary. If you're doing that for 100 parents, you're out of a lot of money really quick. And then we had to do that for years. 5.5 years, we tested about 10 to 15 babies a week successfully. So it's a lot of time. It's a lot of babies. And we don't pay them. Like I said, at the end, we'd give them a little certificate that would be like diploma of, completion. And we actually would do like graduate level. So it'd be like associates of infancy, and then like bachelors of infancy and masters of infancy. And then we'd write their name in really pretty like script with Sharpies and like the date, and then give it to the parents. And the parents were like, oh my God, it's so cute. She's got her masters of infancy. It was a whole thing. Boca parents, like they love fake awards like that. So that's what we would do. But it takes a really long time. Angelina, you're working with birds. I'm sure you have to raise and house and take care of birds and then sacrifice birds.
Yeah, so luckily because I'm doing a collaboration, my mentor kind of deals with the bird stuff, but it's still like I already get them dead.
Yeah.
So it's like I can only it's annoying too because she is in another city. I have to drive an hour with like a freezer box full of dead birds. And I can only take like so many at a time, like 4 or 5 max. And so it's like we're gonna need some more, and then we have to like pluck the feathers and like make sure they're all prepped for scanning and then package them. So it's a long process and then the CT scanner, it takes about a few hours to even image it, and it can't move at all. And if it moves, even if you just shake the table, all those hours are wasted. You have to redo the picture. So it's a long process. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And even, for like criminal justice research, our old TA, Carolyn, she was our TA last year and the year before. She did criminal justice research. She'd have to go in and catalog all kinds of court cases and compare them to the law in all these different states. And of course, there's 50 states in the United States, and then somehow make sense of all of that. So it's a lot. Like it takes a long time to do research. It's not something you can just kind of do overnight. Kind of like a science fair project. Like a science fair, they're like, oh, you have 2 months to collect your data and then you're ready to go. And it's not how it actually works. It's a really long process.
Sorry, I also wanted to bring up there's different levels of involvement with professors. This is getting a little bit more into it. So for example, I know when I was taking the research methods 2 and 3, all of us were talking, some had mentors that were super involved and would be like, we're gonna have the grad student do most of this and you can do this little bitty part. And then there's people like me where, because it's a collaboration, my partner and I, essentially we created the whole project up, and we just talked to our mentor and we were like, this is what we want to do, let's use collaboration. And so basically Emily and I, my partner, we're basically operating not on our own because we have a lot of help from people working in the lab and from our mentor, but we're maintaining our project on our own, and we're the ones responsible for moving it forward, as opposed to the other type of setting which some of you might be into, where it's like you join a professor's lab that's already established and you're just kind of a part of that, and you're learning under the wings of another someone older, like not TA, what do you call it?
Grad student.
Yeah, grad student. So there's different levels to that as well. So because we're doing, for Emily and I, we're doing our project on our own, we're still in the developmental stage, and this project's been going for a year. So it really takes a lot of time depending on what you decided to do.
Yeah, and that's a discussion you kind of have to have with that advisor of, first of all, what's their comfort level with you working in their lab, and then what's your time frame. If you're going to graduate in a year, you can't do a project that's going to take you 2 or 3 years to complete. It just really depends. Yeah, in my lab, undergraduate students, we called them our grunt work. They did a lot of phone calls to parents. They helped us set up for appointments. They cut postcards. We could send those out to parents. They did a lot of lower level work. It was only the graduate students that actually got to run their own experiments and collect data and do that kind of stuff. So we never had undergraduates do a whole lot. I had a couple of students who did what's called an honors thesis, where they did take a small aspect of a project that I was working on, and they would analyze the data and then write up a paper based off of that. But it's a very different experience. So it just depends on kind of where you are kind of in your research journey, and then where that professor is. And there's a bunch of different factors involved with that. And I'm going to talk about that, I think, a little bit more on Monday or tomorrow. Today's Thursday. I keep thinking today's Friday. It's not. Okay, so you conduct your experiment, you collect your data, then you have to analyze it. And that can take anywhere from a couple days to a couple weeks, depending on how good you are at stats and what kind of stats you're trying to run. Most of it's done on the computer these days, which is fantastic because doing ANOVAs by hand is very tedious and very easy to screw up. Doing it on a computer makes it much easier. So my analysis for like my master's thesis and my dissertation, I think it took like 2 to 3 weeks, which in the grand scheme of things was nothing compared to data collection, but it felt good. You get it, and I'm not a big stats person, so I was just like, I just want to get this done. I just like plowed through it in a couple weeks, and I got a lot of help from friends. And then you have to write your paper. Now, depending on the people you're writing your paper with, this could be very quick, or this could be several years of torture. My advisor in graduate school, he is a notoriously slow writer and a very, very slow collaborator. We're still sitting on data projects that we collected data like 10 years ago. Like, it's that bad. Like, we just have piles of data that like he's just never even bothered to look at. Because he always gets himself involved with new projects and then never finishes the old stuff. We were writing up my first publication, and this is another thing. You have to have the journal in mind for what you're going to write. So like I said, we try to get into the Nature neuroscience, and the type of paper we're trying to write is called a short brief. And so typically that's about 1,000 words, which sounds like a lot to you guys. It's 3 pages essentially of actual like text. When it comes out in Nature, it's like this big, like it's really super tiny. So you're taking like 4 years of work and you're collapsing it into like half a page, actually like on the newspaper side. And it was torturous. And my advisor is notoriously long-winded. So the first like draft he wrote was like 25 pages, and we had to get it down to like 6 or something ridiculous like that. So that took us a couple months. Now, that's actually quick for him because he knew we were under pressure. He knew other people were doing similar research to what we were doing, and we wanted to be the first ones to get it done. So the thing is, if you are second place, like you might as well not have done it at all. You have to be first place or no place. Like if you didn't publish on that topic first, it doesn't matter. So he was really rushing to get it out. And so we got that together in a couple months. We sent it in, and like I said, within 24 hours, it was thanks, but no thanks. So we were like, crap. Now what do we do? And so we went to another art journal a little bit lower than Nature Neuroscience, and that's called the Proceedings of the National Academy of Science. So we have Nature and Science on the top. Those are like the top 2 journals in the entire world. Just kind of below that, just barely, is the New England Journal of Medicine. You probably have heard about that before. They mentioned in Grey's Anatomy, any medical show. Oh, the New England Journal of Medicine. That's top. But obviously, I'm not going to publish in a medical journal because I'm not a doctor. Not a doctor. I'm a doctor, just not a useful doctor. And I can't publish in New England Journal of Medicine. That's just not going to happen. I'm a psychologist. And so one of the other ones that's just below that is called the Proceedings of the National Academy of Science, PNAS for short. And they're another general science journal, and it's also very good. And so we rewrote our paper for that. That one you get a lot more space. So, and by a lot more space, I like when it's actually printed, I think it's like 4 pages, 5 pages is what you get. It's like 30 pages actually typed in Microsoft Word, and then it gets condensed for editing, meaning like format. But so we worked on that for like 2 months. We got that written. We actually sent it to a friend of my advisor's, another really well-renowned scientist in this area. He read it over, gave us comments. We made edits. I think we edited for another week or 2. Then we finally sent it in to the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences. So that was a short writing process, probably 4 to 6 months total. I've been working on papers with my advisor sometimes that literally we're going back and forth for 2 years working on a paper. So he will write the initial draft, and then he sends it to us for comments. And he's so funny because he's like, oh, I finally got this. It takes him like 2 years to get an initial draft finally done. And then he comes to me, he's like, okay, I need your responses like within the week. And I'm like, dude, you had this for 2 years. It's not going anywhere. Like, I'm busy. Like he always sends like the very first week of the semester when like I have no time. I'm like, dude, I'll get to it in like 2 weeks. I had to like tell him to like chill his jets a little bit. So then finally, we go back and forth, and then he sits on like another draft, and it's a whole process. It takes like 4 years sometimes to get him to actually like finish an article. It's so bad. But he's very slow. Usually it's not quite that torturous, I promise. Okay, so you finally have a paper. It's written. all your collaborators, like all the people who are on the paper, they're into it. And so then you send it to the journal. Now you make an account on their website, just like anything else. You upload the article. You also have to send in a letter to the editor saying, "Dear editor, please accept this journal or this article for consideration. We worked so hard. Here's like a 1-paragraph summary of what we did," even though it's on the first page of the journal article. All this stuff, like you write them this like really nice sappy letter, and you say thank you, and you send it to them. And then the editor takes a look at your paper, and they go, "Okay, this is a pretty good fit for our journal." So like some journals are really narrow, some journals are more broad, whatever it might be. They take a look at your paper and they think it's decent enough quality to be considered. If they think it's not, they do what's called triaging. They just dump your paper and they say thanks, but no thanks. That decision can take anywhere from 24 hours, like Nature. They're very quick to tell you no thank you, and that's like 90% triage. Other journals are like 30 to 50% triage, and that can take them anywhere from like a week to like 2 months to dump your paper. So you send it to them and you kind of just wait for that email to come back. If they think it's decent quality, you're not at the end at all yet. Like you still got a couple more miles to run. So then what the editor does is they send that journal article, they take off your name, they take off any like identifying characteristics, and then they ask 2 to 3 experts in the field to review the paper for you. And they get like your abstract or like the title of your paper. And then they say, please, accept or decline reviewing this journal or this article for us. And you will have 30 days or 60 days or whatever it might be to do it. It's like your deadline. And they say yes or no. If they say no, they usually will ask them, "Hey, do you know anyone else who can do this review for us?" Because it's such a small field, like you usually know other people. Maybe sometimes you don't feel like you have enough time, like you just know you're not gonna meet the deadline. Other times it's like, I just don't know this area well enough. Thanks, but no thanks. I'm not the right person for this. And so you can say yes or no. And then you get your 30 days. And academics are worse than teenagers. Like they put it all off to the last minute. And then oftentimes they're still late. It'll be like 40 days, 50 days. They finally like review the paper. And when they review the paper, they're not looking for spelling and grammar mistakes, but if they find them, they'll correct them. They're looking to tear your paper apart. They're looking at your methodology. They're looking at your analyses. They're looking at your logic and your introduction, like brought you to the place to actually run the study in the first place. They may tell you you have to run a control study or that you need to run additional analyses. Doesn't matter if that might take another year to get another 100 subjects, they're going to tell you to do it. So they essentially like will write a review as long as your paper, like I'll show you these. I have copies of my reviews from these reviewers, and like they'll put like your paragraph and then they write a paragraph like this underneath it, like twice as long, about why you're completely incorrect. And they do this for your entire paper. And at the end, they give a decision to the editor either to accept, which almost never happens the first time, accept with minor revisions, again, very rare, accept or revise and resubmit, which is most common, like you have a lot of work to do, but we think it has potential, or they'll reject your paper. So you may have now, the editor took a month to make a decision. They send it to reviewers. The reviewers take at least 30 days, if not 60 days, to do your review. So, a couple months later, you get an email saying, "Oh, you get to revise and resubmit," or you got rejected, and that's a bummer. So if you're rejected, then, do not pass code, do not collect $200. You got to start all over, go to another journal. So that's a bummer. You don't want that. You want to revise and resubmit. That's usually what you're hoping for. When you get the revise and resubmit, you get the reviews from your three reviewers. And then your job is to go into your paper and fix it based off of the review's comments. So you might not agree with them and you can tell them why, but you have to be very specific and give your reasoning for why. You actually write essentially a response to your reviewers, each one of them. You also fix your paper. You rewrite your letter to the editor, and then you resubmit that. And that process can take anywhere from 2 weeks to a year if you're my advisor. It takes forever to get his reviews back or to actually like make his corrections. Then you send it back. The editor takes a look. They can decide to reject you at that point, but typically if you're under revise resubmit, they just send it back to the same reviewers. They relook at your paper. They will give you some more comments back, and usually at that point you're accepted or rejected. So you can still get rejected by your reviewers even after the second round, which is a bummer. But sometimes you refuse all their changes and be like, no, you're a jerk, and you don't know who they are. They're anonymous. They can sign their name, but like 99% of the time they're anonymous in their reviews. So you don't know who's reviewing you. They don't know who's writing the paper, although you can usually tell based off of how many citations they have of certain things or like what location, because like in our journals, in our papers, we had to say like, oh, infants were invited from the greater Boca Raton, Florida region. Well, how many baby labs are there in the greater Boca Raton region? There's just us, there's one. So they kind of, everyone knew who we were. But generally it's anonymous, quote unquote, anonymous. And then I don't know who my reviewers are, although sometimes you can tell just based off their writing style because it's a small field. I will say the reviewers do not get paid to do reviews. Sounds like a bum deal, but they get asked to review these papers and do all this work, and it's for free. Because what happens is when they want to get their papers reviewed, they're going to be asking essentially for people to review their paper, and that's also a free process. So everyone does this for free. It's a service back to the journal and back to your discipline. So that's for free. You also, when you get your paper published, you still don't get any money. You still don't make anything off of that. The whole thing is like a big waste of time and money, but that's neither here nor there. I'll explain why we go through this process. Okay, so you revised your paper, you resubmitted it, you hopefully get your acceptance decision. Usually there's still some small things you got to fix here and there. Then you get they sent you your proofs from the journal that says, hey, this is what it looks like. You make any corrections, formatting, especially like your graphs, you want to make sure that they read the way that you want them to read. And then usually a month or so later, you actually go to publication and you actually get your fancy little PDF. And then a couple weeks later, the actual copy comes out in the journal. And then you're like, I'm in here, like I'm in this thing. It's so amazing. And so, yeah, so that's the process. And again, on the short side, so when we got into the proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, that process of submission to acceptance was about 2 months. It was very, very quick. Most journals, it's going to take anywhere from 6 months to a year, and that's considered to be kind of the normal time frame. So even when these things are, scientific research is coming out in these journals, it's still a little old because it takes that long for it to go through that process. But when a person who's doing research says that they got a journal article published, it's a really big deal because they went through that whole process. They came up with a project idea, they designed their stimuli, they conducted their actual study, they collected their data, they did their analyses, they wrote up the paper, they sent it in, they got reviewed, they got their comments back, they rewrote the paper, submitted it again, got more comments, they made it perfect, then it actually goes publication. Like, oh, you finally did it. So I have been through this process for 5 papers that I've had successfully published over the course of like grad school and a little bit. My last paper, I think, was published in 2018, right after I started working at FAU. So it's a long process. I'm currently working on some research right now. I collected data for the last 2 years on my lovely high school students. Unfortunately, COVID kind of screwed up my data collection this spring. So I think next year I'm going to continue my data collection. So I actually have 2 solid years of data, and then I can write it up for publication. And that's going to take a very long time. And I'm not looking forward to that. And I don't like to write. So it's going to be quite torturous. But I'm excited to actually have a journal article come out based off of my research in my high school teaching position. What was I collecting data on? I was collecting data. I'm not running it on you guys, so I can tell you. I'm collecting data to see if taking notes by hand is any more beneficial than taking notes on an iPad. So I had students for 1 year, I forced them, they were not allowed to take notes. And this is my psych class because it's like very content based. They had to take notes by hand or not at all. And then the next year they were enabled to kind of take notes any way that they wanted to. And then from there, I collected a bunch of data, surveys, and I can look at their grades and stuff like that. And I'm going to be able to see if they felt more organized, if they were better at self-regulating when I was taking notes in either format, and then how their grades actually turned out at the end of the school year. So my preliminary data looked pretty promising, but COVID screwed up my last semester. So hopefully next year I'll be able to continue it. So yeah, just a wait and kind of see. Yeah, that's the right answer, Vanna. So you need an ELWA card to enter the library, and you need the account for the online library. But yeah, to do that, all you need is your FAU sign in, and you'll be able to get into all the resources through the FAU library system. And we'll talk about that a little bit next week. And then we also have the librarian. He'll come in and she'll do a whole talk with you guys about the library services. She's really fantastic. Our librarians are really helpful at FAU. We have some great people. So that's what we're going to be doing a little bit more later on. Now, there's something else. Oh, the other thing I was going to say. So in some of these journals, like when they have a conference, I forgot to mention this before we were talking about conferences. At the back of these journals, they have abstracts from their conference proceedings. So if you go to the conference, you kind of want to look at the different talks and posters that are going to be presented. And so in here, hard to read it, but this is the abstracts for their meeting, and this one was back like in 2012. Like you guys were babies at that point. So yeah, this is back in 2012. So you can read through. It's got like the authors' names, their universities, their email addresses, and like a brief paragraph about what their talk or their presentation was about. I presented at this this conference, and you can see it. There's my name. Boom, right there. This, you know, this isn't really something that's like that exciting for your resume, but it was a great conference and I'm glad I did it. I will say mistakes happen, and sometimes they're really bad mistakes. And I wish, I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but in the, I think it's like the second to last, I'll kind of point to it. I don't know if you guys will be able to see it. You can read it well enough. It's the second, by blanking attention. It's supposed to say shifting. We forgot the F, you guys. Yeah, it was bad. So we made a mistake. We had a boo-boo. We misspelled it. And the crazy thing is that 3 of us read over this abstract before we submitted it. The conference coordinators, they read this over and accepted our submission and put it in this book without noticing the spelling error. And it wasn't until I got to the conference and I was like, oh, there's my abstract. Let me reread it. And then I was like, oh crap, that's a bad boo-boo. I mean, we didn't spell a bad word, but we got pretty close. So there's 2 T's, not just 1. But yeah, that was not fun. You know, things happen, you guys. We're all humans. I'm sure I'm not the only one who has a spelling error in there. Just I'm the only one that I noticed. Another thing too, FAU has a research journal just for undergraduate research. So if you're a little intimidated by going through the process of publishing in an actual academic journal, fear not. You can actually get some practice and apply to have your research published in the undergraduate research journal. And just like anything else, like it looks just like the journals that you would see that are like the professional journals. It's the same thing. So it can be any discipline. You could be doing it in the arts, you can be doing humanities, sciences, no matter what. They have their references, same as always. This one's actually got some color to it, so they're very fancy. Oh, look at that. There's color. And as you can see, it's red. It's red and gray. It's very exciting. So FAU actually has their own journal. It's published through our Office of Undergraduate Research. I don't want to talk about more, but we actually have a department on campus that is primarily focused on undergraduate students doing research with professors in every discipline. They can help you get published. You can get grants. That's what Angelina was talking about. She has a grant. And that's actually through the Office of Undergraduate Research. And it's really, you what?
I applied for a grant. I didn't.
Oh, you applied for the grant.
Because it was a
Right.
tough year. I didn't get a grant.
That was like, yeah, it was like weird. All of a sudden they were like, no, to a bunch of people like, are you crazy? But
Yeah, and when I was taking the class, it was like Dr. Meredith had this whole thing about 100% grant success rate, and then like the year I took it, it was like 4 groups didn't get it.
Yeah.
So,
It wasn't just you.
yeah, it wasn't just me.
Yeah, that was a weird, I think their budget got cut or something like that. But yeah, you can get small grants through OURI. That's actually where Dr. Meredith first started at FAU. She was working for the Office of Undergraduate Research. And then that's actually where I met her when she was the assistant director there. And then she got pulled over to the high school. And then she brought me on board at the high school through this whole process. So I'll tell you more about our crazy happenstance meeting abilities. But yeah, so that's how like journals kind of get done. And again, if you're ever interested in publishing research and you don't think what you have is quite ready for, you know, the big leagues of like, you know, academic journals, you can still do this research and do it with the undergraduate research journal. And you can still put it on your resume, your CV as we call it, for academia. And it looks really good. It really does make you stand out when you're applying to graduate programs. So it's a really great opportunity for students. Do you guys have any questions for me before we wrap up? I only got a couple more minutes. I know I dumped a lot of information on you guys today. Tomorrow we're going to talk about how to find these journal articles, the FAU way and then the non-FAU way, the way that you can find them if you're not affiliated with the university. You know, how we determine authors on a journal. And then I have some like fun web comics. And if we have time, we're going to get into academia and like the process of like your career throughout academia, because that's a really important thing that I think you guys should understand. All right. Any questions? Wonderful. Okay. I'm going to